To debate some of the big stories of the week with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have Salt Lake Tribune columnist Michelle Quist and State Representative Jen Daly-Provo. I really appreciate both of you being here this morning.
Good to be here.
Let's start off with the Senate debate. On Monday, neither candidate holding back any punches, and this thing was talked about all across the country. Michelle, let's start with you. How do you evaluate the performance of the two candidates?
Yes, it was very fiery, and the national news loved it. I think it was kind of catty and unattractive at times when they would, when there was a lot of talking about the other person's response and seeking civility and asking for demanding apologies rather than answering the questions. And I'm not sure that that's what Utah voters need in order to decide, who they want to vote for. It helps to reinforce those who already know. But the question is those who don't know yet, and that's the audience that you want to try to reach in a debate like that. Yeah,
that's a really good point, and I want to dig into that a little bit more. But first, Representative, your thoughts on the candidates and how they performed Monday night?
So it's always sad to watch politics as public theater instead of really get to the issues that hit home for Utah families and families around the country, and how our candidates really want to seek to solve those problems. And I think that benefit of the doubt, most candidates really go into these with their talking points, hoping to really resonate on issues that families care about, but it tends to devolve into, bumper sticker politics. Who can say the most catchy thing that can be captured in a tweet? And I'm anxious, looking forward to the day when we can return to debates that are substantive and really answer the questions that voters want answers to.
Let's go into the undecided voter a little bit more, Michelle. If you're an undecided voter going into that debate, do you have any answers coming out of it?
I'm not sure. In the case of Senator Lee, an undecided voter would want an answer for his texts, right, about the January 6th and about the election. And I mean, even CNN said that, Senator Lee's answers on this were not forthright and kind of tried to rewrite history. So that wouldn't help them for Senator Lee. For Evan McMullin, the question is, where exactly does he stand and where will he vote on these issues? And, on the important issues, he really didn't, his positions weren't much different than Senator Lee's, and it's still unclear where he would be, other than that he would be alone on his own and people might come to him, to answer questions. That's his theory. And so as an undecided voter, seeking, who aligns with my values, I'm not sure the debate was helpful at all.
Representative, your thoughts on the undecided voter. Did any one candidate win over an undecided voter on that night?
I think it depends on what issues are most salient to them. If the issue is the January 6th riots, then I agree with Michelle. I think that didn't offer a lot of clarity. But if your issue is how are you going to vote to help seniors get affordable medications, then the answer is pretty clear. And so I would say it's a mixed bag. But at the end of the day, I don't think there are a lot of undecided voters.
In this race, from the very beginning, we've seen a clear strategy from both campaigns. Evan McMullen's campaign trying as much as they can to tie Senator Lee to the former president, Donald Trump. The term that was used in the debate was bootlicker. And we have seen Senator Lee's campaign really try to tie Evan McMullin to the Democratic Party and to President Biden. The term there was opportunistic gadfly. Two interesting terms we heard come out of the debate there. Is that strategy really working, and is that what voters want to hear, Michelle?
With that, I would agree with Jen that it helps those voters who already know how they're going to decide, but it puts off voters who are authentically looking for somebody who aligns with their values, who they haven't identified yet. I think that there was an opportunity, perhaps a missed opportunity, to maturely show that that values align. And Senator Lee's message was, if you want to get anything done, we need a Republican majority in the Senate. And Evan McMullen's message was, if you want to get anything done, we need to be bipartisan. So I guess in that respect, you know, whichever message aligns with your values is who you would probably, you know, align with for this election.
Representative, your thoughts on these strategies that we've seen deployed by the campaigns?
Well, I think practically, if we're talking about Washington, D.C. and all of its dysfunction, if Utah truly wants a seat at the table and a voice heard, then we need a candidate that's being wooed and recruited by both parties. And with a Senate that is as evenly split as it is, you know, having that candidate that both parties really want to work with, who will work with both parties, and I think the clear choice is Evan McMullin. But I don't know to what extent voters actually want Utah to have a really influential voice more than they want to divide into political divides.
How do you see this race at this point? Representative, you say you don't think there are a lot of undecideds. Michelle, what is your thought? And specifically what I'd like to hear from you as we hear Evan McMullin talk about this coalition of Republicans, moderates, and Democrats. In the end, are Republicans really going to vote for Evan McMullin?
I think there are undecideds, especially moderates in the state. And I think the June decision on Roe v. Wade kind of made a lot of Republicans, especially Republican women, stop a bit and wonder whether this was not the time to vote party or not. And so I think that, you know, it makes sense for them to value those messages and listen to the messages. And I think moderates are still deciding. It'll be interesting as the early votes come in to see where those numbers are.
You bring up a point that I'm really interested in, because you talk about how Republican women may be stepping back and viewing this. In 2016, when he was running for president, Evan McMullin said he believed Roe should be overturned. Now he's not saying that. So how is that playing with that demographic?
I think that message is not out there as much. I think his current message that it's a state rights issue is you know, safe with Republican voters. But again, Republican women and women across the board, and you know, I'm not counting out Republican men that might value personal liberty for women and concerns about you know, state mandated pregnancies, reconsidering their positions based on a fear of what a Republican majority might do.
Representative, where do you see the race as we head into the final stretch?
You know, I think that the political pundits and all of the polls and the talking points really don't take enough into account how much people really care about the fact that voting record matters, that we're watching our elected officials and we're watching our senator vote against protecting veterans, and we're voting against making sure that working mothers have access to high quality health care, and voting against seniors getting access to affordable medications. And you know, I think that we get too caught up in the high level, you know, these really partisan issues. And that's not to say that the debate on reproductive rights is not extremely salient and one of the most critical issues that we're dealing with right now. But I think that I really think that those, you know, those issues of voting records and the ability to really claim whether or not you're a public servant for our state is already playing into what people have decided. And I'm optimistic for the Senate race.
Okay, we have about a minute left, so 30 seconds each. I just want to touch real quick on this issue we're seeing play out across the country. You know, a lot is at stake here, and so we're really seeing Republicans go out and hitting the economy and inflation hard. Historically, that has been really on the top of mind of voters, but we have this new dynamic that both of you have alluded to this year in the Roe decision and reproductive rights. Which one has the winning message heading down the stretch? Michelle?
Yeah, 6 months ago it was a referendum on President Biden. In June, that kind of swayed a bit, you know, depending on where you were on Roe v. Wade. It seems to be turning back a bit with Republican messaging on crime and on inflation. I still think, you know, obviously it depends on if the Republican Party can hold Pennsylvania and perhaps gain in Nevada or elsewhere. But I think it's a very personal decision and it's hard to call. I think the one thing is that it's not party specific now and people are really identifying these issues for themselves.
Okay, we only have like 10 to 15 seconds left. Representative, your final thoughts.
You know, I agree with Michelle. I think that it comes down to what impacts families the most, and as you know, many of us are parents, and what we feel is going to lead to a better future for our children.
Okay.
And it's personal.
All right, appreciate both of your perspective. Very interesting conversation. Stay with us. We'll be right back after the break with more Inside Utah Politics.